Next on MLR Weekly, New York's general manager and Sevens czar, Steve Lewis. Major League Rugby headlines and news with Rugby Morning's John Fitzpatrick. Previews and opinion from Bryan of America's Rugby News, and the best recap in rugby by some hack named McCarthy. Rugby Wrap-Ups MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City, the world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle. Hello again, and welcome to this week's MLR Weekly. Matt McCarthy in New York City. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you again. We have a great show. We have Mr. Steve Lewis, the general manager of Rugby New York, the Ironworkers, who are in the playoffs, and who's also very well versed in the sevens side of things, so he'll fill us in on that stuff. We've got Mr. Bryan of America's Rugby News with previews, predictions, and opinions. We've got the best recap in Major League Rugby, done by yours truly. But before we do any of that, we have our recurring segment, Rugby Morning's Coffee Break, with Mr. John Fitzpatrick. John, hello. How are you? Good to see you. What do you? I hate when this happens. John, where'd you go, John?
Sorry, I had to go find Nemo.
Oh, does Joe Buck have to go through this? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. What do you got for us, John?
Hey, Matt, it's taken us 17 rounds, but I think we've got the playoff picture figured out in both the Eastern and Western Conference. Seeding still up in the air, which will make for an exciting round 18. But let's start in the Western Conference. The San Diego Legion, after 12 straight wins, have secured the number one seed, so they'll have the bye in the first round. So in the Western Conference eliminator game, we'll have the Seattle Seawolves hosting the Houston SaberCats after Utah, in a big win that they needed, lost at the end at the death to the Chicago Hounds, losing 26-24. Matt, what did you think of that?
They've redefined dying in Utah. Death at death. Unbelievable. Shocker. Kudos to the Hounds. But, oh man, my heart bleeds for those Warriors. Next!
Let's move on over to the Eastern Conference, where the New England Free Jacks, after 9 straight wins, of course, they've run away with the Eastern Conference. We all know they've got the first seed, but we're still uncertain who's going to host that Eastern Conference eliminatory game. It's going to be between Old Glory DC and New York Ironworkers, but we still don't know who's going to be the second seed. And here's how it's going to shake out. New York right now, they are in second place. They are 4 points ahead of Old Glory DC. New York takes on the Utah Warriors, so the Warriors could still play spoiler in all of this. Old Glory DC is at home against Rugby ATL. They need a bonus point win. They need New York to lose, and lose big, for Old Glory to hopscotch them to host the Eastern Conference eliminator game. I know John Nash with all the different combobulations and stuff. The point is, it's going to make for an exciting round 18. We're not done yet.
Let me simplify this for you, okay? DC has to get 5 points in a bonus win victory, while New York has to get 0 points for DC to have a chance. Next!
The one time Matt McCarthy simplifies anything.
And you're saying it might be the Utah Spoilers instead of the Warriors. Next!
Matt, how about the Toronto Arrows? They started an all-domestic starting 15 for the first time in Major League Rugby history. Pretty cool, huh?
I'm a little, I'm not really 100% sold on that. I mean, what is your definition of a Canadian? Because you got a bunch of different accents in that lineup. You got a Kiwi or two. You got a South African or two. What the fizzle? Come on. Next!
Matt, let me ask you a question. The San Diego Legion have won 12 straight games. So they won 14 in the regular season, setting a new MLR record. They host the Seattle Seawolves in round 18. Will the Seattle Seawolves snap San Diego's 12-game win streak in Snapdragon Stadium?
I don't think there's going to be a snap in the snap. I think that Seattle is going to strategically rest their players, whereas the Legion want to get those fans continuously pumped up and get them to come back for that Western Conference final. Next!
Oh, snap, Matt.
Oof. Oh.
Get us out of here, Matt.
Next.
Close us out. We're done. We're done.
No, we're not. We're not. We haven't talked about discrepancy. Hashtag discrepancy. Do you know what
Elaborate.
I'm talking about here?
No, I don't.
Okay, Fantasy Ruckers. Fantasy Ruckers throwing the rugby wrap-up team under the bus by not telling us that the playoffs were going to be going on during the regular season. We were built for the postseason that coincided with MLR, and I got a discrepancy, and I'm calling it out in a kangaroo court against the Flying Yee brothers and the Canadians that are involved in this conspiracy for Fantasy Ruckers.
You obviously have never played fantasy sports in your life because you are completely wrong. As someone who was in the championship, thank you very much, you are completely off base.
Yeah. Oh, am I? Am I? I don't think so. And this is my show. You are done. Thank you, John Fitzpatrick, who is complicit in the Fantasy Ruckers conspiracy. On that note, we have to say goodbye to Mr. John Fitzpatrick. And before we bring in our other guests and look forward, we have to look back with MLR's best recap with yours truly. At SaberCat Stadium in Houston, Texas, Old Glory DC had their work cut out for them while trying to secure a home playoff game. The hometown Cats, however, had playoff implications of their own in their paws and clawed away at the outside-the-box lineup Washington put on the pitch. Houston picked up a yellow card and a red card, along with 16 penalties, but still had enough firepower to win going away. Special note, Christian Dyer scored 2 tries after coming on this show last week. Final score, 31-7. At Choctaw Stadium, Dallas was looking to jackal their 3rd win of the year against a sleepy NOLA side. In one of the least exciting games of the weekend, 3 tries were scored, and New Orleans' Jordan Traynor led all ball carriers with 150 meters gained, while Conrado Rura and Adrian Boyson continued to play heroic defense in a losing cause for the second-year Jackals. NOLA stood tall at the end and won 15-10. In a must-win situation on the road in Atlanta, New York, faced a disappointing but still dangerous Rugby ATL. The Ironworkers showed their steel with 226 tackles, led by Caleb Geiger's 26 and Hamish Dalzell's 25, while killing off 4 trips to the sin bin, including one for a penalty try. New York countered with 5 tries of their own and got star Jack Payton back from a long spell out on the injured list. Final score, 39-24 New York. In one of the more inexplicable results in MLR history, a stunned Utah crowd watched their Warriors throw away a postseason berth in brutal fashion. Despite being dominated in the lineouts 26-11, giving away 17 penalties and a yellow card, Chicago hounded Utah and unleashed Julian Dominguez, who got himself a Gordie Howe hat trick. That's for you, Canadian fans. It was death at death for Utah and a miraculous victory for beleaguered Chicago, solidified by the savvy and steady Chris Matina's conversion after time expired. Chicago doubled their win total, 26-24. In Toronto, fans were thrilled to watch their team take a 17-7 lead against the San Diego Legion into the halftime sheds. Unfortunately, the Arrows emptied their quivers in that first 40, and Legion coach Danny Lee's part-time Surfers scored in waves in the final 40, annihilating Toronto with 43 unanswered points via 7 second-half tries. The visitors clinched a bye, home field advantage, and kept their record-breaking winning streak intact. Final score, 50-17. The New England Free Jacks flew across the country to face off against Western Conference heavyweight Seattle, and many thought New England might mail in a meaningless match for Massachusettsians. Meanwhile, the Seawolves needed a win at Starfire, which may be renamed Sunfire, as the sun is even in the viewers' eyes. In a wild contest that saw each side score 4 times, it was the kicking game that carried the formidable Free Jacks past the team with 2 Malcolms in the middle at hooker and Peter Malcolm's 2 tries off the bench. New England shows how the West was won, 34-26. Let's take a break.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
Hey, you need rugby cleats and you need them tomorrow? Well, rugbynow.com. www.rugbynow.com. If you order them today at 3 p.m. or by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they have youth cleats, male and female. They have adult cleats, male and female. You can have them by tomorrow if you order them today, 3 p.m. New York time, noon LA time in the United States. Rugbynow.com.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? My fellow Upper West Side of New York City, Steve Lewis, the general manager of Rugby New York's Ironworkers. Stephen, welcome to MLR Weekly.
Thank you, Matthew. Pleasure to be here.
Stephen, we got a lot to talk about. I mean, specifically with the Ironworkers, but first and foremost, give me the skinny on the season. It's been tough. You've had the injury bug on steroids, so to speak, and yet you guys are right here in the mix at the end of the season.
Yeah, great performance down in Atlanta this last Saturday night. The guys' 39-24 win, which vaulted us above DC. So we're in the playoffs. That's clinched, and they have the opportunity now to make the playoffs when it's one-off cup tie rugby. So that's good. We still need a point. We still need a point against Utah to get a home playoff. So looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been an up and down season. We were certainly struck with some serious injury, particularly HIA stuff in the middle of the season, but we're getting healthy at the right time. And if you remember rightly, last year we got hot late. So hopefully we can lightning a bottle twice, right?
The season has been a struggle, certainly, but you guys still are trying to grow that game in New York and try to grow it in America. Tell us about some of your youth stuff.
Yeah, so it's an interesting couple of weeks. So we've had the academy, our academy, which is coached by Mike Petrie, the Foundry we call it. So we've played a couple of games against the Free Jacks back to back. Unfortunately, the bad guys won, but it's good outing, good exercise all around, and that's going well. But the exciting thing is this weekend, Mount Vernon Memorial Field on Saturday is the second annual Ironworker Classic, which is an all-state, all-star tournament. So New York versus New Jersey, Connecticut versus Pennsylvania, the winners play. That's on the boys' side. We also have a girls' side where Connecticut are playing Pennsylvania. So it's a great day for youth rugby this Saturday at Mount Vernon. Then we go up to Quincy to the Free Jacks, and we play in the first MLR under-18 tournament, which is Houston Sabercats, Free Jacks, Rugby New York, and then 2 select sides, one from Massachusetts, one from Florida. Every week it's tougher and tougher, which is what young players need to get. Iron sharpens iron, so it's a great thing.
Iron workers would know that iron sharpen irons.
So it's important for me that we make their experience better, and for these young players, the ability to play for the school, then their state, then Rugby New York. This is a fantastic thing. It's the right direction we're going in.
All right, Steve, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you some sevens questions, because you are the reigning sevens czar here in the United States of America. So fill us in on what's going on in sevens.
Yeah, well, sevens internationally, you're going into the sort of Olympics in Paris next year, right? That's the big thing. Top 4 sides from the World Series already qualified with the hosts. So you're now going into qualifying season. So personally, I am actually off to Mauritius this time next week to coach Nigeria in the African qualifying tournament. And then obviously in terms of our Eagles, their dates with destiny is in Langford, Canada, where they have to win the North American tournament, which means essentially have to get past Canada. If they don't get past Canada, there is one, the last chance saloon, which is the repechage tournament. For the women, of course, they've already qualified. They had a great year. Domestically, you've got the PR7s coming up in its 3rd year, I believe, and you're seeing an uptick on the quality of players. They have a slightly different format this year. That's happening. And then, of course, you have the standard traditional club 7s in the summer. So we are now moving into sort of domestic 7 season, but there are some important international tournaments on the horizon.
Mr. Stephen Lewis of Rugby New York and Nigeria, thank you for coming on.
Great to be here.
Let's take a quick break and come back with Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. And we're back with Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. It was a big week in MLR. You got your New England Free Jack stuff, your San Diego Legion, you're outside the Chicago's dog pound, if you will. I can't say that to a Chicago fan because of Cleveland Browns. I get it. We got the final week of the MLR season. We've already talked about the playoff structure, but we've got these games left. And there's one game that matters, really, and that's the New York Old Glory game. We'll get to that in a second. But first game up, Dallas hosting Chicago.
Well, did anybody predict Chicago beating Utah in Utah? I certainly did not, and all I can say is what a performance. They earned. I mean, we knew they had something. I thought it'd be this week that they would get that win that they were looking for. I did not think it'd be against Utah. And remember, I mean, they were missing bodies. No Luke White, no Cam Dodson. I mean, there's some pretty significant
They're on the road.
Missing that one. Just a tremendous performance by them. Julian Dominguez just on fire on the wing. He had a legendary game.
Nearly a 50-22, and Dominguez busts out the soccer skills to keep that in. Oh my, what a play. Otherwise, that's a 50-22 at the 5-meter line.
I think you got to pick Chicago on the road here. I honestly might have gone with Dallas if they'd beat NOLA, but they just look flat, and they've given so much this year. I think they're just tired at this stage. I think Chicago has just proven they've got a little bit more left in the tank, and they've now got some wind at their sails. So I'm going to pick Chicago on the road.
I agree with you. Old Glory still playing for a possible playoff home game. It's not the greatest of chances or odds of that happening. Rugby ATL going in there into Washington, D.C., the nation's capital.
I don't know how much D.C. really wants to win this game. It almost seems like they're just, hey, let's just get into this game against New York and see what we can do. So
you don't think they want a home game?
I just think
that sounds like New York and Coney Island with James Kennedy.
It's super weird, but that's the kind of feeling you get knowing that losing that game and getting no points at all against Houston. It makes it really difficult for them to get in there now. So it's to me, it just seems like they're resigned to playing that away from home. I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but it is what it is, and this is a hard one to call because of that. I'm going to pick Old Glory because they're the better team this year, but I don't think this is going to be a runaway win for them.
I think that next year, Toronto and Old Glory ought to agree to have an All-American versus All-Canada team, right? And have that little battle and call it the Battle of the Border or whatever, but, it'll still have people with different accents. But Josh Sims is a Kiwi. I'm reminded of 2007 when I paid through the nose, a lot of sterling to go to All Blacks versus Scotland in Scotland at Murray Field. And the coach of Scotland benched his entire A side because he knew he had to beat Italy the following week. So there is that in rugby, right? And I'm like, nobody told me. I flew over here on my dime. I've paid for this ticket. And I just kept standing up there screaming, freedom! And the poor Scottish fans were like, oh, 40-zip at halftime. Thank you. Toronto hosted NOLA. And if it's a half game, Toronto's going to win it.
Yeah, if only there was a big, thunder and lightning at halftime against San Diego. That would have been something. I mean, who wants to lose less in this game? Probably the two, as far as form goes, maybe the two bottom. I can't say that because Nola just beat Dallas, so that doesn't work. But definitely two near the bottom is on the form guide. Both of these teams have been beaten up by injuries. It's it seems to be whichever 23 is lounging around the morning of the game are going to get in. So I think this is one that both kind of fans just want to see. I'd like to see them just run out some young guys and try and have some fun, throw the ball around. It's probably going to be nice weather, I think, in Toronto, or, hopefully anyways. And certainly the Toronto fans are enjoying the rugby anyways. They came out to watch that game and against San Diego. They've been coming out to every game. So at least give them something to enjoy, throw the ball around, have some fun. At least they can do that. I don't know who to pick here, to be honest. I'll take Toronto just because they're at home, but I don't know.
New England hosting Houston.
Free Jacks, it doesn't matter who plays for them. They're always an excellent team, and I don't see any reason to expect anything but an outstanding game. I think we'll see their A side. They got the bye weekend, the bye week after that. They got to pick their best team for this one, get everybody on the same page, decide if it's going to be Reese McDonald or Bodie Walker at 15. It's a tough call. McDonald's been, really kind of an unexpected guy, really impressed this season. So, Walker is Walker. We saw some of the stuff he did, just the past couple of games that he's been back. So that's going to be an interesting call to see. Houston on the road. At this point, they're just kind of getting ready for that next game, right? Too, and they don't want to lose this. They're going to be playing tough as well. But at the same time, their eyes are kind of on a week after that. So I'm going to pick New England at home. I think it would be a good game, but I got to think the Free Jacks just look, they're a classy outfit. To beat Seattle, that was a good Seattle team, not a bad Seattle lineup by any means, even with their bodies out. So to do that in Seattle with the team that they put on the field, I got to pick New England.
Yeah, and Houston's without Danny Barrett, red card, right? Unless it's mitigated circumstances, but it doesn't look to be that way at this taping. And you can't dismiss that New England stadium atmosphere and those fans. They've got it right. They've got that whole thing going. You got all those fans, those avid sports fans up there just screaming at you if you're the Sabercats. So I think New England might run them out of the park, to be honest with you. New York hosting Utah, in which should have been a whole different animal.
Boy, did Chicago deflate this one.
My God.
This would have been a heck of a game if only things had gone a little bit differently in the last, 90 seconds of the game.
Oh, my God.
Jeez.
How about Chris Mattina, baby?
Oh, wow. Unbelievable. New York looked pretty, certainly they've been trending in the right direction this end of the season. They look pretty confident against ATL. Really no trouble whatsoever getting that bonus point and, getting a few bodies back, getting Jack Hyten back. I hope they start him in this game. I think they have to. They have to see if he's, if he can actually go. So I think he'll get a run at 10. A couple other guys can. I hope Manate Akui gets another run. But he's been in such good form. I just, I guess he had a minor injury or something this past weekend, but I hope he gets another chance to prove that he deserves to be in that, because I think he should be in the 23. There's still some interesting storylines for New York in this one. So, and Utah, it just got to be so deflated because, but they don't want to lose. They can still kind of play sport. Maybe if they run, if they take out all their frustrations, maybe there's a chance that DC can squeeze in and take that spot. So it's not like there's nothing in the line for Utah. And Greg Cooper certainly isn't going to tell them to lose. So it'll still be a good game, but I got to back New York in this one.
And then San Diego hosting Seattle. Now, this is another one where it's like, okay, do these teams rest players? San Diego won't, because they're in front of that Snapdragon crowd and they got that winning streak going. would Seattle load up, and would they want to knock them off and snap that streak snap it at the Snapdragon?
This is a really tough one to call because, well, maybe not to call per se, but to see what Seattle does here. I think you're right about San Diego. They rested a couple guys, Blair Cowan and Ma'ananu against Toronto. They will not be happy with that first half against the Arrows. And hey, if they make it to that championship final, where are they playing? Not that far from Toronto. It's a road trip for them. It's going to be tough. They cannot afford to come off the plane and go to sleep for 40 minutes if they get that far. So I think they'll want to prove a point in this game
I don't know that flying to Chicago is the same as flying to Toronto.
All right, they don't have to go through customs, but it's not that much further. I mean, it's only as short as far as airtime. What, another half hour, maybe an hour max to Toronto. But I think you're right. I think San Diego rolls out their big guns in this one. They get everything right, and they put on a show for their home fans. The question is, Seattle, what do they want to risk? Because they could be playing San Diego again. If they win against Houston, then that's 2 weeks they're playing them again. They're not going to want to show them too much of their cards. At the same time, they look kind of beaten up, don't they? And they'll want to rest some of those guys that are kind of on the edge. But again, they're running short on numbers, so. I don't think this one matters too much to Seattle in the end. So I'm going to pick San Diego by a significant margin. And I don't think that should be a reason for Seawolves fans to get upset or anything. I just think that's what's at stake here is not a whole lot for the Seawolves to gain, aside from maybe, we broke a winning streak. But the real game will be in 2 weeks if they can get past Houston.
You got any final thoughts for us, Bryan?
I'm just, here we are. It's time to play. We had... last week I said we had 2 questions left. Now we have only one. Is it going to be New York or Old Glory hosting in that game? Right now it's looking like New York, unless Old Glory really pours it on and Utah decides that they have to take it out on New York. But still, we're still looking at guys, if they can come through this last weekend fit and healthy and firing. San Diego didn't look good for 40 minutes against Toronto, so we just gotta but I think in the second half they kind of said, okay, all right, let's get it done. So maybe they answered that, here we go. I'm excited. I'm ready to get into the playoffs. I kind of say, let's just get rid of this last week of the regular season. Let's get right to it. But hey, it's one for the fans. I hope the teams who aren't going to the playoffs kind of just move the ball around and have some fun and play for the fans that are there in the stands and not worrying about anything else, really.
All right. On that note, I want to thank Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News, Mr. John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning, and Mr. Steve Lewis, the general manager of Rugby New York, and thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other shows, including the critically acclaimed The Rugby Odds, the College Rugby Wrap-Up. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Please sign up for our weekly newsletter, and please join our American Red Cross Blood Donor Team.